Hello friends! If you're here for CoSy, you already know what's going on, and if you're not here for CoSy, let me explain what's going on real quick. CoSy stands for Costume Symposium, and it's this year's answer to COVID, which was basically a replacement for Costume College that was happening online due to, you know, the panorama. But this year, all of the costumers decided that we wanted to come together once again and bring you a free online conference experience. So a bunch of other awesome costumers and I decided that we would do this for you, and I will have all of the links to the costume playlists and the schedule in the description box below so that you can go peruse all of the other exciting videos. But let's talk about this video now. Technically, this is part of a series on my channel that I do where I walk you through everything that I picked up as a low to no budget costumer and make sure that you don't have to fall into the same pits that I did when I was starting out in community theater back as a little baby costumer. Today we're going to be talking about how to respectfully approach taking measurements. You will need to take measurements from your whole cast so that you can dress them in clothes that actually fit them and draft patterns and select patterns that will, you know, fit them properly. But won't it be awkward to poke and prod someone's body and take like objective measurements from it? Yes. Yes, it will. And any insecurities that they have are going to bubble up. They might be nervous, they might word vomit to you about their relationship, about their body. Not to mention how uncomfy the inseam measurement can be. Also, like, isn't it kind of legally weird to be taking measurements from a minor or a creepy man? How do you navigate that? Don't worry, we'll get there. We're going to talk about it. I've broken it into little chunks for you. You can skip around, get to whatever part's relevant, and I will be leaving this video up after CoSy, so if at any point you find yourself costuming a musical, I've got your back. Parental consent and accountability. When getting measurements from a minor, it's really important that you have their parent or guardian in the room because, like we mentioned, measurements require some potentially awkward touching. And besides that, measurements are often taken in a private or semi-private room, so you as an adult want to be as mindful as possible that no one is disappearing with your small and vulnerable cast members, even if it's you. Aside from that, there's no other difference in taking children's measurements. Just make sure that an adult is there. I wanted to mention this first just because it's easy to forget and it's important. Now, I just mentioned that you want to take measurements in a private to semi-private room. Why? Well, it can be a potentially awkward experience for the most confident person to have the numbers that correspond to their physical form rattled off one after the other. They might not want people overhearing that. Also, depending on what they wore to the first rehearsal or to their costume fitting, assuming that you were able to schedule those, they might need to undress a little bit. That way, if they wore something like a really, really bulky sweater and the tank top they're wearing underneath isn't something that they're comfortable being seen in, it just stays in the costuming room and no one else has to see it. They're not bearing everything to the whole cast. Although with quick changes, we all know that's going to happen anyway, but still, it's good to be as respectful as possible. Now let's talk about weird comments that costumers sometimes feel compelled to say while taking measurements, such as, "Wow, you're so thin," or "I would kill to have a bust line like that," or "Oh my goodness, you've got thunder thighs for days." Even if your comments about their body are positively meant or you think that you're hyping them up, it can still be really awkward, and in my experience, there's more potential for harm than there is for good, so it's usually best to just stick to the measurements, maybe ask them about their day, the weather, what they're excited about the show. If you have them talk about their character, you can get some really nice insights to what they're excited for. Also, of course, asking them about allergies and things like that can keep the room from going silent without you needing to fill it with potentially upsetting things. Now, I have heard the advice that you should ask your actors if their waist tends to fluctuate the second you get them in the door. And I disagree with this very strongly. I would say that you should just account for the possibility of weight gain or loss in all of your actors, in all of their costumes, and don't waste time on profiling, and certainly Don't make it their problem whether or not their costume fits. That's your job. So just keep the seam allowances wide. I know that I like to use a 1-inch seam allowance on the side seams and any center or center back seams, just so that there's some fabric there to let it out with. And I like to keep any scraps that I have of that fabric with the costume, so that if there happens to need to be a random gore put in, or, you know, a ribbon along the seam just to let it out a little bit, you have that option. And I find it a lot easier to just assume that there will be problems for everyone than to try to run around like a chicken with my head cut off figuring out where the problems will happen, because odds are it's never the person you think it's going to be. So this really isn't a useful question, and it can really stress actors out. If an actor does bring up to you that they think that their weight might fluctuate and they're concerned, go ahead and walk them through what your contingency plan is if something like that were to happen. The aforementioned gussets, letting out of seams, and taking in of seams, for example. It's not that big of a deal, and make sure that they know that so that it doesn't stress them out. Because the more of a positive rapport you have with your actors, the more respect they'll have for you, the more likely it is that they'll listen to you, and the more likely it is that you will get a magical unicorn that shows up to all of their costume fittings. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Along this same vein, innocently meant or not, don't comment on an actor's weight gain or loss in between seasons. I'm going to tell you a horror story really quick. I knew a dancer who every single season, the head costumer would tell her, "You've gained an inch. You've gained an inch from last year even. That means that since your first year, you've gained 2 inches. And this stressed her out so bad. And I didn't know about this at first. I only knew that she wasn't showing up to fittings, she wasn't showing up to like costume rehearsals, she wasn't being very helpful or productive when we did have costuming questions or concerns with her. She just didn't really engage much. And that was why. It was because she didn't feel comfortable in the costuming room, and she didn't feel emotionally safe around the costuming staff. This is a pretty extreme example, and I'm sure you have no intentions of saying anything that's that obscene to someone, but little comments that you might see as innocuous, because I genuinely think that this woman who was saying "you've gained an inch" thought that it was well meant in some way, but it was still upsetting to her. And you don't know what's going to be upsetting to someone, so just try as best you can to be professional and kind. But how do you create a non-judgmental and welcoming and encouraging environment for your actors? Let them know straight up that your only goal is to make them clothes that fit them right and are comfortable for them to move and dance and perform in. Make sure that you don't want them to suck in their gut. That's a really good start. I don't care how small you can make your waist. I want to know what your waist size is, because you need to be able to breathe in this costume. Not because you don't want their seams to pop. I've heard this phrase used, and it is very innocently meant, but it puts a visceral image in your head of your seams popping while you're on stage. Pro tip. When an actor tries to apologize for their body, don't let them. Tell them that they deserve a well-fitting costume that makes them look like their character, just like everybody else. Tell them that the casting directors chose them for a reason, and you're going to respect that decision, and they should too, because they look awesome and they're going to be great on stage, and you're going to outfit them perfectly. If they ask if they should lose weight, go ahead and say no. Just stay how you are. Keep the same eating and exercising habits you have, and make sure that they know that you are more than happy to edit things and alter things if their body were to change, because that's your job. Your job is to make sure their clothes fit right. Keep everything confidential. We already mentioned the private room, but on top of that, make sure that they know that their measurements are only going to be seen by you, anyone else in costuming staff, and potentially if there's like some kind of crazy rig that they're going to be wearing, I guess the tech people would see it, but other than that, it's on a need-to-know basis, and no one really needs to know. Now, we've already talked about accountability. We're going to talk about it again, in a fresh new context. You're on your knees, you're in front of a man, you're taking his inseam measurement, and he comes up with a brilliant thing to say. And that thing happens to be wildly inappropriate and uncomfortable. It's really frustrating because it really does happen all the time. And this is why I like to measure with 2 costumers in the room. First off, you can take the measurements while the other one writes them down, and that makes your workflow a lot faster. But while you're picking your jaw up off the ground, they can make sure that that guy knows that this is not really an appropriate time to be complimenting you, or that he's a little bit out of line. Shake it off and let anybody in a human resources type role know. That would be either your director, if it's a small production, your stage manager, or if it's a very, very large production, you might want to go to your head costumer first, just because there is a chain of command sort of a thing. And like I said before, you have a witness in the room, both to have your back in the moment, and also if something majorly sketchy happened, they can back you up and say, I was there, I saw it, and that is what happened, which can be incredibly useful, especially if you wind up having to involve law enforcement of any kind, which hopefully you don't, but things do happen. Also, it's good to have someone in the room because if an actor misperceives what you're doing is inappropriate, they can stand by and say, no, that was just a standard inseam measurement. Or, God forbid, if a costumer is being inappropriate with actors, the other person in the room can say, yeah, no, I was there, that actor was right, sketchy stuff was happening. Accountability makes the world go round. Sorry for how kind of upsetting that whole topic was, but it's really important to talk about, and I would be remiss not to mention it, because my original plan was to just talk about, body positivity and making people feel comfortable and confident, but safety is also very important. So, sorry about that, but how do you take someone's measurements without having to touch their junk? I'm happy you asked. What I like to do is I'll walk up to an actor and I'll kneel in front of them and I'll be like, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this measuring tape and this silver part right here, I'd like for you to take that, and I'll gesture to my own thigh. I'd like for you to take that right up here to the top of your thigh where it meets the rest of your body. And if they misunderstand this, you can be like right near the groin muscle or where your leg becomes your crotch. And then that paints a better picture for them. Some people don't like to use the word crotch or the word groin. They're anatomical terms. I'm really sorry. You're maybe just gonna have to get used to it. And then once they have it there, you can just let them know, okay, I'm gonna tug on it gently to get it nice and straight so I can get an accurate measurement, and then that way they're less likely to drop it. And if they do drop it, no big deal, just hand it back to them. It'll be fine. Another thing that I like to do when I'm taking the hips measurement is I'll loosely put it around the hips so that there's about 2 inches of slack. And then I'll say, okay, can you move the tape measure to the apex of your bum, the part of your bum that sticks out the furthest? And I'll have them reach behind themselves and move it to the part of their bum that sticks out the furthest. And most actors understand what you mean when you say this. And then once it's there in the back, you move it so it's in line to the front, and you just tighten it a little bit. Take the slack out of it. Not so tight that it's, cutting their circulation, just as you would normally want it, and it's no big deal. But the place where I like to position myself is right here in the side of the hip, so that I'm working on them right here, because, it's a safe distance away from everything else, that you're not really up in their business, but you're still getting an accurate measurement, and you've got some good contact with their body. You can do the same thing with the bust line. You can come up from behind the actor, especially after getting the neck measurement and the length of torso from the back. You can just go ahead and bring it behind them and say, okay, could you move this to the apex of your bust? And they'll go ahead and do that for you. And now you have a nice measurement. It's easier with 2 people, as I'm sure you know. And now obviously if you're going to make something that's very fitted, like a vintage bra, for example, or if you're going to be making a really intricate corset type thing, you're gonna have to get in there and get apex measurements, such as apex to apex, or things like that, which are going to involve you getting really up in their business. and just let them know ahead of time. I am really gonna be up in your business, prepping you now, and give them time to, emotionally prepare themselves for that, because sometimes people need a minute, and you should be fine. Now, the last thing that I'm going to mention before wrapping up is it's important to talk to your actors about any allergies or sensitivities that they have. That might be an allergy to wool, an allergy to latex, an allergy to fragrance. These are important to know, and you can make a note of that in their costuming measurements, as well as letting the stage managers know, just because it's really important for everyone to know this. If someone's allergic to latex, the makeup department certainly needs to know, as well as the props guys. And if someone has a severe allergy to fragrance, you might need to make an announcement to all of the general actors not to be spraying perfume and stuff. But other than that, you are ready to go out there, take some measurements, and respect everybody while you're doing it. Actors are infamously emotional, so if you have someone who is determined to have a bad day, odds are they're going to walk out of your costume shop having had a bad day. But you will know that you did absolutely everything in your power to make their day as good as possible and make them feel as safe and comforted as possible. A vast majority of the actors I've worked with have been completely lovely, so you probably won't run into too much of an issue, but we all have our horror stories. Now, while taking measurements can be a really potentially stressful situation, it doesn't have to be. Just move with confidence, treat your actors like people, correct them if they don't treat you like one, and odds are you will have a fantastic experience. Anyways, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a like so that more people who are lovely like you can see it. And I will have all of the CoSy stuff linked in my description box below so that you can get to the schedule and get to your next video and figure out what else it is that you want to do. Also, if you're watching this after CoSy, go ahead and explore. There's probably a lot of videos still up. I think that some of the live streams are being left up as well, so you can pick a weekend and recreate CoSy whenever you want. Just get cozy, watch some CoSy. Like I said, I'm leaving all of my CoSy videos up so that you can watch them whenever, especially because this one is part of a larger series on my channel. So if you liked this video, you can go ahead and hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. But either way, I'm happy you were here. Oh, before I sign off completely, I almost forgot. There's a badge for this video. Ta-da! It's the Surviving Measurements badge. Good job, camper. I don't think you guys are campers, but I always think of like little Girl Scout campers when we do the badge thing. If you don't know how the badges work, what you're going to do is you're either going to scan that little QR code right there, or you can enter the little 5-digit code. I think it's a 5-digit code. And you can put that into the little badge app, which I will have linked in the description box below if you don't already have it. I don't think that the badge collection game works after CoSy is officially over, but if you're here during the CoSy weekend, here you go. That's for you. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all later. Bye!